Mr. or Mrs. Listener. We accept the fact that you're going to sacrifice a whole hour to listen to this podcast, but we think you are crazy. In the simplest terms, you see us as you want to see us. A Ninja Turtle, a Jedi, a redhead, a Mike. Sincerely yours, Redhead Family Therapy Guy, and a Mike.
Don't you forget about the bugger. So walk on by. You better listen to this thing. It's gonna be great. All right. Well, we're back for another one. Thanks so much for being with us. You've found us again, the Redhead Family Therapy Guy.
And a Mike.
I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
And I can't imagine, well, if you're not watching our video, which not many people do, you would see Michael's incredible setup for Ghostbusters. That's a Lego Ghostbuster car, right?
It's a Lego
So
Ecto
cool,
1. It actually came out for the Afterlife movie.
Oh,
and so
really?
it came with stickers of like rust you could put on, but I just left it off because I wanted it to look all natural. I wanted it to look like original Ghostbusters.
And the old school hearse in Ghostbusters, even when I watched it the other night, was like still one of like my most favorite things.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yep, it's
that
actually
was
a
so cool.
Cadillac. Isn't that cool? It's a Cadillac that was used in the original movie, and they like souped up the engine and all types of stuff.
That's so awesome.
The
thing about Ghostbusters too is it was just like oozing with nostalgia for me, because I've watched Ghostbusters a lot. Like, I've watched it a lot.
It's amazing the cast they got together for Ghostbusters.
Right?
Everyone played a part that was really just amazing, and I think that's what has made it so endearing and enduring throughout the years. But yeah, it's very nostalgic to my childhood. Oh, he is so amazing.
He's such a great actor. I still respect that he retired to like be a family man, but
yes,
we lost a good one. He's such a great actor.
Amazing in this. I mean, he's good in anything that I've seen. Oh,
come on. You know what movie my kids absolutely fell in love with was the Little Shop of Horrors movie. Like, they all like went bonkers for that. They love that movie.
I grew up watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids a ton. But yeah, we should do Little Shop of Horrors. But he was amazing in this. I love his character, Lewis, and just
so good.
Just the way he plays this nerdy, desiring, kind
guy. The scene when they bring him back to home base and he's just like there and they're like studying him. Like, all of the interactive dialogue is so funny. He's like,
it would be so awesome to talk to him and just find out like how much of that was just like impromptu.
Like improv. I bet they're
improv.
Just yeah, they were just like, yes, have some.
I love it. And then I have always loved Venkman. So Peter Venkman for me was always awesome. For some reason, as a kid, I loved the beginning when they're in, well, it's not necessarily the beginning, but towards the beginning of the movie, when they're at the hotel and Peter Venkman runs into Slimer and gets slimed. That, for me, that scene, I don't know why. I have no idea why. Has always stuck in my mind.
Like,
and that's why I have my Slimer here on the table.
He slimed me.
Yes, I've always loved Slimer for some reason. And he was
like the sidekick in the cartoons.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, the real Ghostbusters cartoon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was like a sidekick. Yeah, the movie is it's just so good, man. Like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Raymond, like it's such a great. They should have done more movies together, man. Like other movies, they should have kept working. They shouldn't have had that fallout because they're just so.
Harold Ramis and Bill Murray. Harold Ramis is interesting. Like he really started doing a lot more. I mean, it seems like he always had behind the scenes roles in the movies, but started doing a lot more. And he really, I mean, he's good as an actor, but I mean, I think it's hard to find that good behind the
dynamic way that they complement each other as characters in that story is just so cool. I mean, just that they're just in these different spectrums of personality.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Is this like the like Dan Aykroyd's like historical rants on like random ghost facts or whatever,
which is just
throughout the
kind of
movie.
him, right? In real life too. Like if you
Oh, is
ever
it really?
watch his stuff on UFOs, his sci-fi stuff,
Oh, I don't think I've
his
ever
ghost stuff,
done that.
he's totally just that way in
Like
real
he's just
life.
a legit like
He's
supernatural nerd.
hardcore. Yeah, he's
That's cool.
hardcore. And it's fun to watch some of his stuff. He's done some UFO
Like documentaries or
shows.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's talked about I remember seeing one thing with him where he was talking about kind of the history of his family and how his family has some tie-ins to kind of just, I don't remember if it was like conspiracy type stuff or if it was just tie-ins to always being attuned to like extraterrestrial activity type stuff. I can't remember what exactly it was, but he is like that in real life, which is really cool that he's able to personify that in this movie.
I've got sci-fi on the brain because I went last night and saw Moon Falling with Sarah, and it wasn't a particular. It was what it was, right? Like I wasn't expecting or hoping for it to be some great like sci-fi movie, but the story, like the theory that comes out of what's going on with the moon is really interesting and cool.
I've not heard of it. Who's in it?
Halle Berry, I forget the male lead. The guy from Ant-Man, the Latino guy that's hilarious, and Ant-Man is in it.
Man, I can't remember.
And I can't remember the guy that was the main actor. He's been in some decent stuff. I liked him, but the story just had kind of like crazy holes and it was kind of ridiculous. but it was but what was going on with the moon was really, really interesting and cool. Like I really liked the idea that they came up with that. But anyway,
any sci-fi.
All right, so this movie, Ghostbusters, is so much fun to watch, and there's so much great humor. But now watching it as an adult, and then of course knowing that we're gonna like be philosophical or look for themes or whatever, like holy crap, it really was a fantastic like I had such an awakening of a view of what's going on with the characters and the development and the storyline. So I don't know where you want to go with it first. I don't know if you want to talk about the parts that they're just hilarious and we love and super nostalgic, or to jump into the meaning stuff. Why don't we start with just the fun stuff? Like, what's one of the most fun moments for you from the Ghostbusters?
So
movie?
I really like Peter Venkman or Dr. Venkman. I think just throughout the movie just makes me crack up.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lois. I mean Lewis. Sorry, Lewis is. Oh man, he's just so good. And so I think pretty much any scene, excuse me, any scene with Lewis, because he's not in it a ton, right? He's in it at his party. And then he's in it as he
brought
becomes
the dog.
But I think the beginning when
Dr.
Venkman is with Sigourney Weaver, I can't remember her character's name, in their apartment, just that whole scene where he comes like, out of the bedroom, or he goes to the bedroom and she's like, nothing, there's not much in there. What does she say?
Nothing happens in there. Nothing happened in there.
And he's just his witty remarks that he has, which are so Bill Murray.
The thing that was funny though, like, I mean, it's a great scene and he's so endearing in being kind of womanizing or attempting to be womanized like he is. But he's like, it was also a little creepy because he's like, I love you.
Yeah.
He's like, and she's like, okay, get out.
I think probably one of my favorite scenes, and I'm not sure why this is the case, but one of my favorite scenes is at the end when the Gozer, what is her name?
Gozer?
Is it Gozer? The lady is telling them essentially they have to think of who they're gonna gonna battle or whatever, and they're like, okay, don't think of anyone. And then Ray stands, he just has this look on his face because they hear off in the distance.
We used to sit around by the fire. That's good.
I love it. I love that he thinks of marshmallows, and also you have this huge
did you notice I didn't notice this before, but she has like a bag of Stay Puft marshmallows next to the eggs that like jump off the counter and like explode.
Oh, I don't think
there's like a bag sitting there. I'm like, oh, look, there it is. They're like,
that is awesome.
And it's like sitting like right, like, so you could be like Stay Puft, and it's like, you know, the guy's like on it.
I love it. And I think I have a question.
So hold on. Oh, go ahead.
I think from that scene, I've thought kind of as a kid, and then I was thinking again as an adult, what would you think of?
Oh gosh.
If you're posed with that, you know, they were trying not to think of anything, and Ray automatically thought of something that he thought would not be hard or dangerous or scary.
As a kid, we just roasted them. We've got these plasma guns.
So what would you think of?
No idea.
I always, and I don't
like, if I was Ray and gonna think of something that I could defeat.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Fuse.
I've always thought of, and I don't think this is a good one because they would probably kill me, but I've always thought of Wicket. I've always thought, how awesome would it be to see a huge Wicket?
No, I don't. What?
You don't know who Wicket is?
I don't think so. No, what is that? No, what is a Wicket?
So
it sounds like, is that something that you use in like lacrosse? What is that?
Wicket is the name of the Ewok from episode 6, Return of the Jedi, where he's the one that helps Leia, befriends Leia. He's the, I guess, friendly Ewok, although they don't really appear to be that friendly.
They're like,
but I always as a kid,
those...
I had an Ewok stuffed animal when I was a kid.
Savages, dude.
And I've always thought, oh, I would have Wicket. But the point is, it doesn't matter what you have, because they're going to be this ginormous thing trying to kill you.
Or just something that's super powerful. I don't know.
I always thought Wicket looked so fluffy and soft. And
how about Winnie the Pooh?
Sure.
Or Eeyore.
Winnie the Pooh he'd have a honey pot and just drop it slowly.
You stole
Honey
my
Eyes
honey.
Honey Eyes the city. But I don't know why. I love that scene. It just is so funny. And I love Ray's reaction in that scene. It's just so genuine.
Yeah,
like he's so genuine and childlike. Like I was just trying to I couldn't help myself.
What would be easy? And then
it was this huge marshmallow man. And then I always loved when they destroy Gozer or whatever by crossing their streams, right? Which they're not supposed to do because it would cause the end of the world, which I love when Egon earlier kind of mentions that in the movie. Like, oh yeah, just a side note, don't cross your streams.
I know the description that Dan Aykroyd makes or whatever, or is it Egon that's like, imagine all of the particles in your body stopping and reversing course or something like that. And Dan Aykroyd's like, yeah, that'd be bad. Yeah. I the part of the movie that I loved, that I realized that I loved, but also realized because it was 1984, right? So that's quite young.
Mm-hmm.
Still, and I remember that this movie was a really, I think, important movie because it was like, especially the opening scene, like was scary, right? Like for my 8-year-old or 9, I don't know how old, like it's scary. It's like in the library, and libraries are kind of creepy, or they can be, and there's all this mysterious knowledge.
The ghost is scary though.
Yeah,
like,
the gore
when she freaks out is scary.
And so like that whole scene, and there's like the music, and it's like, woo,
Yeah.
And so like the fact that the movie like scared me, and I had a really bad experience with a horror movie in my young age that like I don't like that genre. That's not my gig.
What
My
movie
brother
was
did.
this?
Freddy Krueger. I saw it really young. I saw it really young, and I had nightmares for like a month. Like a month, like terror nightmares for a month because of that movie. I don't know what my parents were thinking when they let me watch that movie.
What movie is Freddy Krueger in? Is it Friday the 13th or is that Jason?
It's Freddy Krueger.
It's just Freddy Krueger.
I
Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, that like
my family is the same way. They love scary, and I'm not a scary like, especially if it's like demonic like that. It's freaky in your dreams, and
I like thrillers,
sure,
but I don't like horror. Like because I think there's just a part of like the indiscriminate killing of what you could say about action movies too. So I guess that's bad logic, but yeah, I don't know. It's just the demonic aspect. Even before I was a person of faith, it's just like I don't know. Like it really messed me up as a young kid. I mean, really bad. Like
so you were traumatized watching this library ghost.
So, well, I just brought that up, right? Like, it's like I'm older now, a little bit older or whatever. But so then because it was a fun movie, like it demystified that a little bit. And I think it empowered me to not be as afraid because it took this scary thing and made it comedic. You know what I mean? And so I think it empowered me. And so, but I was very much in that opening scene, like I was in touch with like the part of me that felt that like and I love the way that it opens, the way that it introduces you to the characters through those through that opening scene at the library, because you jump right into Bill Murray like as this absolute like charlatan of a researcher. You know what I mean, where he's got this one guy that's like legitimately has like ESP.
Yeah, he's getting him all
but he
right.
doesn't even care because he wants to like hook up with this
chick.
Because there's this girl that he wants to like shag or whatever, and so he's like enjoying shocking the nerdy guy, and the nerdy guy like shocks the gum out of his mouth or whatever. It's so good, and he's just so blatant and just so heartless. It's like he's like totally bullying a nerd, you know what I mean? And so he's just so like it's amazing how he's all of these loathsome, like loathful things, but you still just love Bill Murray. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how it is
he does it either.
That he can really be kind of creepy and horribly inappropriate, but it's fantastic.
Yeah,
like
he seems to win you over every time.
It's just because it's like he's playful about it, and it's almost like he doesn't mean it. I mean, here he is bullying a nerd so he can like get with this girl or whatever, but it's still like playful. I don't know. It's just so it's like magical that he has this ability to play those two things against each other. So it's interesting. So I love that whole opening sequence, and then going there, and then going to the library. And so so they're interviewing the girl, the lady that had the encounter with the ghost, and she's also too like from Poltergeist, right? Like so she's from Poltergeist. Isn't that the lady from Poltergeist?
I can't remember. I can't remember who they interviewed.
Yes, this is the old lady that saw the ghost, right? And I love how he's like, he's trying to assess, which they clearly have to do when they're doing ghost stuff, is like, are they crazy people, right? Because a lot of people and he's like did you are you menstruating? And the librarian guy's like, what does that have to do with anything? He's like, hey man, back off, I'm a scientist. Like, it's so funny. Oh my gosh, I was dying. I was so funny. He's like, back off. And so like, and then of course then just going into, and like there's slime and ooze everywhere, and the bookshelf falling, and then they're like, there's the ghost, and he's all like, go talk to her. And like he's like, and she's all like, like the whole bit is just fantastic. It's so funny. Like they're like, well, what do you do? And then he's like, get her.
I love it. I love how they have like, I always loved the proton packs. I always thought that was the most amazing thing. But I love how they just destroy everything. And at some point, you have to wonder
We saw.
how much destruction is the ghost actually doing? Like, how much is it actually
Maybe we just
disturbing?
leave him be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I love
Not
like when they're trying
capturing
to
the
decide what to bill the hotel for after they catch the Slimer. And like, I didn't notice it as a kid, but Egon's like,
Yeah, he's
like putting up fake, and then he's all like, and then this, and he's all like,
yeah, he flashes the numbers up by his face.
So funny because he's like, he's the ones like knows what budget they've got to cover, and Bill Murray's just like this, like snake oil salesman, or whatever. So it's it's such a count.
I was thinking about what you were saying too earlier. I remember watching this as a kid, but I would have been really young when it came out.
Yeah, dude.
But then I was thinking that back then, I remember movies would be in the theater and they could be in the theater for like a year or longer, but then they wouldn't come out for years. Like it could take a couple years. So even though a movie came out in like 84, it may have still been kind of new, right? You think about movies now, they literally are out to buy before they're even out of the theaters. Back when we were kids, it could take years for them to wait. Come out, and they were still new because they were just coming out to.
Because how exciting was it when they would put one on?
Or put them on TV. Yeah, that's what I would see.
So exciting, and you would like be taping it and pause them.
Well, back then it was too expensive to have. I mean, I don't even know if you could really buy. I can't remember.
No, they were super expensive, right?
VHS we bought or Betamax. Yeah, it was so expensive.
Yeah, that's why you rented at the video store, because you could rent for $5, but like to buy one was like $120 or something insane.
The first movie I remember, we were at a video store. I don't remember which one it was. They didn't have like big ones back when I was young that I remember. But I remember we were at a video store and Dick Tracy came out on VHS, and I'm pretty sure it was a 2-pack VHS. Do you remember how they would do those? Like Titanic was one too, but it came out and it was like $90. It was something astronomical. Insane. And I remember sitting there as a kid thinking, man, I could get a Nintendo. Why would I buy that when I could get a Nintendo?
That's why we went to the video store. 5-star video, man. But I remember Ghostbusters like coming out. I feel like that might have been one we bought like after, because it was like one of those ones that was like on sale for $24.
That's cool.
And so like after, I think it was one of the ones that we owned, because I watched it a ton.
I did too, and I do
must
remember
have
watching the cartoon slightly, not as much as I remember watching like the Turtles cartoon, but I do remember the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and that's probably where I really started to get a more fond view of Slimer. Was from the cartoon, but yeah. So I was thinking about that also earlier, about how I remember watching this as a kid, but I would have been so young. But really, I probably didn't watch it until later when it was on TV or when we had it on VHS.
I went to the theater. I saw this movie in the theater. I'm trying to remember who I would have gone with. I don't know if it was my brother. I feel like my dad might have taken me to it. My dad had a thing where he would take me to the movies occasionally, on movies that he was like real excited to see. Like I remember Top Gun, we went and saw that. But okay, so I have a deeper question to ask now. So, man. What do you think this movie is about? Right. So there's all of the hammy, comic stuff that carries itself.
I think it's about
as I really thought about this,
I have no idea.
Dude, there's a really kind of deeper underpinning to why this movie works, and I think why it's so profound. So
educate me. I have no oh man, what is it really about?
What's it really about?
I don't know.
Well, think about the
friendship
opening scene. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Friendship.
But think about the opening scene. Like, what is the conflict that happens? And how they introduce it is, I laughed.
What's the very opening scene? Is it in the library?
So after the library, right? So after the library, do you remember what happens after the library scene when they come back to the university?
Oh, when they get like shut down or whatever.
Yeah. So they get kicked out, right? And it's hilarious. There's this fantastic line. I wish I would have written it down, that Dan Aykroyd says something like, like he's like, well, what are we going to do now? Like it's like this idea that they can't just study nonsense.
Yeah.
Like it's such an interesting like mockery of higher education, because it's like we're not like, now what are we going to do now? Like we won't be supported and funded in like doing nothing for money, essentially is what he says, some line like that kind of instigates that, right? But so there's this notion of legitimacy, and this idea, because especially because Bill Murray is the charlatan, right? Like he's the salesman, he's not into this science. It is all,
he's a psychologist,
right?
Which is always kind of the fake, right? That's the
Right.
fake doctor.
Right, exactly, right? So he is not legitimate, right?
Yeah.
And they're just existing.
So legitimacy is a theme throughout the movies, right? Even into the new Ghostbusters Afterlife. I think friendship and family could be a theme throughout all the movies too, especially with Ghostbusters Afterlife. I feel like that's very blatantly obvious.
Yeah. So the thing that really struck me is that like Peter is kind of like this big teenager, he's like this undeveloped boy, who's still kind of playing out, the teenage whims of even though he's older, like trying to hook up with college girls or whatever, he's not legitimate, right? And then you've got this science that is kind of hokey or supernatural, and they're trying to like kind of quantify and deal with this, right? So you have this journey of illegitimacy and then also too, like they don't even have competence to like make money. They're like, well, what are we going to do? And I remember being horrified by like, well, okay, well, we're going to start this business or whatever. And they like go to the bank and they get like this 19% loan. And I was like, oh my gosh, like a 19% loan. Like what? And like, I think Egon even says something like, I've calculated like the interest, and that's like $90,000 a year or something like ridiculous like that of interest payments or whatever. So there's this tension of illegitimacy and like being kind of an undeveloped man, right? And so not being taken seriously, running around after girls, and there's this journey towards gaining legitimacy, right? Because you have all of these like metaphors or motifs or even power structures, like the EPA. The EPA is going to come shut you down because you don't have the proper permits, or you're making it up or whatever. That guy plays that character so well too, like the jerk from the EPA that's like on a power trip or whatever. So you have this journey of this undeveloped teenage boy who becomes enthralled with a woman, but he can't be taken seriously by her, you know what I mean? And then there's also this really interesting like comparison of she's an artist and he's a scientist, kind of, or whatever. So it really struck me of this idea and the movie being about, because Peter's kind of the main character, and his travel from kind of a big boy man to a man, that becomes the hero, in leading this, this group of guys to defeat this demonic, power that's going to destroy the world or whatever. And so it really became profound as you kind of look at it through that lens of that journey, and then the different kind of flavors that come in, the struggle for finances, the struggle to make any money. And then of course, it's this interesting timing where Gozer's making its return. So there's all this paranormal activity happening in the city. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Does it strike you at all? Or does it seem to touch anything for you?
Sure. So just this journey of really growth and I think purpose, right? Because in the beginning, they all kind of seem like, well, I guess more so Venkman doesn't really seem like he has a purpose. And that's obvious when he's doing the ESP experiment with the boy and or the man and the woman, right? And he's just kind of just doing it to get this girl to want to do something with him, right? Go out on a date or whatever.
Right.
And that escalates into finding a more serious connection, right? And I think him and Sigourney Weaver's relationship is interesting to me because as it progresses throughout the movie, it becomes more legitimate and serious, to where he becomes like, Venkman is less of a playboy and more of a monogamous, serious person towards the end, where he wants to have, like, it seems like a genuine desire to have a relationship with her.
And he's become more legitimate, right? Because when he first meets her, like they have no success.
Yeah.
But
and
then
she mentions that at one point
right.
too, right?
And then when he circles back around and he sees her outside of the fountain when she's come out of practice, it's like, well, he's legitimate now. Like they're busy and he's doing something. And so he's like, see, like I've grown up, like I have value, I'm doing something. I'm solving a problem. I'm providing a service. I'm more legitimate. Like I was an illegitimate, suitor, and now I'm a legitimate suitor. And then of course he saves her, right? Because she becomes possessed and chaotic, and he frees her from this possession with the powers that he's developed. You know what I mean? Well, and it's a really interesting arc too, because it really strikes me, that at that end scene when they're deciding to cross the streams, which is really interesting, right? Because it's like they have to do this forbidden thing to be successful. And he says to Dan Aykroyd, like, or maybe both of them, like, I'll see you on the other side. And so there's this real notion of like doing this act of sacrifice and risking everything for the girl or for the greater good, because they have to defeat the evil demonic Gozer that's going to take over the city or whatever. So there's a real transition of selflessness versus this guy that was a charlatan of psychology and kind of anchored to these two legitimate scientists as friends, you know what I mean, and the person that's like the salesman of the group, you know what I mean.
And I think that that's interesting when we look at our lives, when we feel that we're not enough, right? Which I think is kind of the sense in the beginning for me is, we're not even enough to continue with our grant funding or whatever funding they had with this university. When we're not enough, we tend, and I think that feeling was present even before they lost funding.
Right. Well, especially for Bill Murray, because he's not legitimate, right? Like he's not serious.
Yeah.
He's
and when
this guy, getting by.
Yeah. And when we struggle with adequacy in our lives, we tend to reach to find anything to comfort us, right? And that's where we get into habits or compulsive behaviors or even addictions that cause us more heartache, right? It continues that cycle in our lives to where we're seeking. And so understanding and recognizing that we have value and worth, even when we don't, because they didn't all of a sudden gain value and worth. It was always there. They always had this understanding. They were always striving
for the talents, right?
Yeah,
that allowed them to complement,
to magnify that. I think understanding that we have that within us opens up the door to options that are maybe more fulfilling and create more happiness, even though maybe it's not easier, like getting the loan, starting your business, having to put your life at
take
risk,
responsibility.
not easy. But maybe there's more fulfillment from that,
right?
And
then just being this funded group of aimless researchers, at some university.
And I think that's symbolic of all of us, right?
Sure.
Even in my life, even serious, now,
taking responsibility.
Times I think we continue throughout our life to go through these cycles, and that's why you see Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters Afterlife, because we have these cycles. And so maybe the idea is, what can we do to help us remember a little bit more? I think remembering is the hardest thing when we talk about progression and consistency within progression in life. Consistency, if we maybe substitute progression with growth in life, we all are worth so much. We all have so much to offer, but I think we forget and we fall right back into those
right
cycles of
well we can be
inadequacy.
aimless. Yeah, well, and we can be aimless, right? Like if we're afraid, or we want to just play, if we don't want to become serious contenders and seriously valuable to our family or community.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? We are, we kind of spin. And then I think it's okay to have times like that in our lives. I think there's value and I think appropriate to have time, where you can just be not have responsibility, because you're going to, if you're going to mature, you're going to have to take on some serious responsibility. So along with all of this, something else that was really interesting to me was you've got all this supernatural and supernatural stuff, and then science trying to figure out the supernatural. But then you'll also have this really interesting moment, where they're pulled into the mayor's office, and they're describing how the EPA really created the problem, and there's blame, which I think is a funny metaphor, that like government really creates more problems than it solves. You know what I mean? In its power trippingness, and then they have this cardinal come in where the mayor is like, seeking faith answers in this biblical, the biblical proportion crisis. And and the mayor's like turning to the man of faith and saying, well, what should you do? And he's kind of like, well, make a decision, and they kind of put their faith in science, as it were. Though it's though it's a questionable science. But then what was really interesting that really struck out to me is when the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man shows up, and what's the first thing he destroys? It's a church.
I don't remember. It's
a church. And Bill Murray's like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? So it's interesting that like science is standing up for faith, in this really interesting moment where justice is raining down, or evil is eking into the world, and it attacks a church. And then these guys that, aren't like faith guys are like, whoa, like this is our town and this is the center of our community. You're not going to destroy that, Mr. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Like, what do you think you are? It's like, nobody destroys a church in our town. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just really interesting, like juxtaposition or contradictions or whatever.
That whole mayor office scene is just really funny.
Oh, it's funny.
I love that scene. But it's interesting because
Mr. Dickless over here.
Yeah. And the actor, the EPA actor,
the guy with red hair, you mean?
Yeah, isn't he the one that has like, what's the movie he's in where he's a bad guy and he has a black eye? Oh, The Last Action Hero. Is that what it's called with Arnold Schwarzenegger? He plays the bad guy, I think, in that movie.
He's also a bad guy with the Kevin who's the guy that plays Iceman in Top Gun? Who's the actor?
The one that got cancer. Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Batman.
Val Kilmer. Yeah. There's a movie where Val Kilmer and they're like brilliant, like young guys at college, and he's like this professor or administrator at a university. He's a real jerk, just like he is in Ghostbusters.
I can't think of what the name of the movie is, but I know what movie you're talking about. But even in that scene in the mayor's office, I feel like when they use like what the cardinal says, they use kind of this faith base to get the mayor on their side, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, because they play into that, because they're playing like, well, it is biblical. Mm-hmm. It is out of control. And this guy is, the one that initiated that, because that became the sign to Gozer that it was time to emerge, because all of this evil was released all at once or whatever. So there's some really interesting dynamics playing that seem really like deep to consider, though it's this playful movie and it's nonsensical and wild, but there's some really interesting things being put against one another. And it really stuck out to me that you've got this science aspect and research, and faith interplaying in almost a really kind of a supportive role or a protective role, that science, because it seems to me that like Bill Murray wants to protect faith, or it's like this integral part of community, or a place that you fall back on, as you're trying to figure out the answers of the universe or whatever, and I think you can pursue answers of the universe through science and research, but there's, obviously a place for faith, and so I don't know, I just really, maybe because I'm older and I'm a person of faith, it really just struck me that there was this dynamic going on in the movie.
Well, I think that Harold Ramis tends to have more, like, that's his style of comedy, right? And you see it in his movies, because I if I remember right, him and I think Dan Aykroyd maybe wrote Ghostbusters, and then Ivan Reitman directed it.
Mm-hmm.
But Harold Ramis, I feel like his storytelling is comedic, but it has undertones, right?
Of like
Maybe like
really
philosophical
serious
undertones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really philosophical, right? Because too, it's like, after they're kind of, anointed by the mayor with permission to go forth,
Uh-huh.
they face off at the hotel, and how interesting that they all die, right? Like they all
Yeah.
end up in the street, like, right. And so there's this real descending below, falling, and then they've got to climb out of that, and face, the evil or the demonic
Yeah.
presence taking over the universe. I thought it was really interesting. I was like, oh, that's really, well placed, that they kind of are, dying, and kind of fantastically protected by grace, in this anointing from the mayor pseudo cardinal, scene, right? Because
Well, they've all been redeemed, right? I mean,
right,
they've
exactly,
gone from a fallen state of, they were, kind of getting along like we talked about, and then they lose all their funding or they get fired. And so they go through this fallen state to a redemption through that comes through sacrifice, right?
mm-hmm.
The redemption comes through sacrifice of
Mm-hmm. And
really,
gaining life experience by, gaining technology, creating things that really keep the evils of the world in check, right? I mean, because they're really keeping evil in check in the community by ghost busting, you know what I mean?
and
But it's so interesting to me that they're anointed by faith and the mayor. It's like by the power structure of society,
sure.
they're freed from their captive, from being
Well, I think
arrested
it's
because of the government nonsense.
this idea of to be redeemed or to be free, we have to be willing to change or sacrifice something. And I just pose that I think oftentimes we view that change or sacrifice as, I need to do more, or I need to do something really difficult or hard, such as quitting my job and starting a business from scratch, or I need to experience some trauma in life that really has me move in that direction. But I think oftentimes for us, the hard thing that we need to do is learn to love and accept ourselves for who we are and see our own potential worth. And I think that is the hardest thing in life to do, because our internal dialogue is not that.
Oh, it's
And
so
we have to work
interesting.
so hard against that internal dialogue.
It's so interesting that that's the state of the average person, to take the discouraging, difficult experiences of life and turn it into a story that you're not of value, and that there is this need for personal redemption to discover your innate value, but then also, cultivate capability to be a valuable person for other people, you know what I mean? To sacrifice and to be given, right? Because, Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Egon, they have these talents, and they're valuable, and you know, figuring out something and providing a service of protection for the city. But then, like, you know, they're willing to face death, right? And really to face this thing. The interesting thing about Ghostbusters 2 is it's like insurmountable. It's like,
Yeah.
what do you do with Gozer? Like, what do you do with a demonic being that has the ability to create an evil foe out of the thoughts of your mind? Like, it's a pretty, like, it's this completely mysterious, like, unknown force of destruction. And these three, like, ragtag guys that have got some capability are going to face off against that, against all odds, you know, which is, I mean, it's kind of movie magic or whatever, but it's a really interesting idea of like they don't really have it, you know what I mean?
I think oftentimes we view success as a completion or accomplishment. You know, it's visual. For example, Ghostbusters, they have success because they've defeated and this monster, right, and saved the whole city. And you know, I think that every one of us has negative view of ourselves. That's why those that we look to for success always have a positive affirmation they use or a mantra, because those things are fighting. That's their way of fighting their own negative self-view so
Absolutely.
that they can continue forward.
It's really fascinating because, like, if you do, which I from time to time I do, I'll watch these montages or pay attention to the Vic Novaks or whatever. Like, it's really interesting. I had a really negative view of him, and he's this entrepreneur guy that like made money by like selling stuff on eBay or whatever. And it's, I've watched a lot, many curses like crazy or whatever, but like he's all about like being kind, like, and helping other people, like and helping people like develop the capability of taking responsibility and being prosperous. And he's really genuine about it and really serious about it. And the way he talks about like his companies and employees and all that kind of stuff is really fascinating. And so it's like, yeah, when you pay attention to these people that are really successful, there are these drives that they really figure out and really double down on and are really hardcore about. I mean, like, individuals that are wildly successful are insanely,
well, I would
like,
say
driven and obsessive almost in the application of the thing they learn that helps them develop capability.
I would push back on this framework of success and say success is measured in each and every moment that you're able to talk back to that negative self view. And I think that's
to not be defined
in life.
To not be defined by that negative story.
Well, yeah, I believe that spiritually, and I believe that as you know,
well, it's defeating the lie, right? It's defeating the lie that's possessed your soul.
Yes.
So you're liberating yourself from the lie by embracing the truth, and you become affirmed of the truth, because as you apply it, you see it work to allow you to surmount the Gozers that manifest themselves in your life, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think that's, you know, I think that's wherein maybe if you get philosophical with this story is it's a reminder to us that we have great potential, great worth. And the only person that's naysaying that is us. And striving to fight against
there's a few haters out there for sure.
Is what's key. Well, those naysayers, they become believable, or we perceive what they're saying because of our own negative self rhetoric.
Yeah, there's this.
So if we can correct that, then it doesn't matter. No one else matters besides the view we have of ourselves. You know, in being able to move forward and deal with those that maybe have a more negative self view. And of course, I mean, I'm not trying to give a blanket statement. We have there's our life that matter immensely.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this quote that in this montage of inspirational quotes, and it's something, I'm not going to get 100% right, but something like, the enemy without can do what is it? The enemy without can do us what it's I'm messing it up. the if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do us no harm.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's a great quote. And I think what it means is you can be the hero, not by saving the world or not by having a super successful business. You can be the hero by really seeing your own divine worth.
Absolutely.
And I think that's
overcoming
the story.
Overcoming the internalized lie of the traumas of your life, whether that's inflicted by family, whether that's inflicted in peer groups.
Yeah.
Because we become hurt by that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to discover the lie in those stories that we internalize of not having value, of being stupid, of being incapable, of being ugly, annoying or whatever it is, discovering the value and acting that out to confront. And that's hard. It's so hard, right? It's really hard to, because the voice does seem to possess us.
Sure.
That narrative really, can really, and it hurts so much, and it's so terrifying to confront.
Well, and anyone who says they don't have that is just, they're in secondary emotion land. They're not able to even notice or recognize it because it's too painful. And so what I encourage oftentimes when we talk about like a hero's journey, that journey or that process is learning to recognize what that rhetoric is saying. As we learn to recognize, then we're able to do something about it.
Yeah, to confront and go for it.
I think that's what's so empowering to me about all of these movies. It's fun to see someone save everyone and become this obvious, noticeable hero. But I really see that each and every person that I meet with and in my own life, we're heroes as we strive.
Well, and we're on this journey. We're on that journey.
Learning and grow and love ourselves more.
So I was always perplexed and still a bit so this is totally open-ended. I don't really have an answer for this question of these metaphors of Sigourney Weaver being the gatekeeper and Lewis, or who's the actor again that plays Lewis, is the keymaster.
Rick
Moranis. Any ideas of because do they unlock? I mean, the evil breaks out of the statue. It comes alive. It possesses them. And then, I mean, it seems like them connecting, which happens off camera, but is portrayed like that. Their connection opens the doorway to evil. I don't know. Is there anything that stands out to you about what that's about? Because it was, I remember thinking about it as a kid and being like, keymaster, gatekeeper, like what is what? Like there's something relevant about that, right? Because the powers of evil aren't released until they connect.
Yeah.
And then they're the sentients, like they're the, she comes out and she like pets them and like they're the sentients or like her minions of destruction, right? I don't know. Is there anything that jumps out at you at like what the message is about either unlocking the chaos, that like the gatekeeper and the keymaster connecting in some way opens chaos? I mean, maybe it's, just an overly basic metaphor of a man and a woman coming together and that can release chaos into the world. I mean, having children and starting a family and, it can open up a whole can of worms. I mean, it really does. Well, I guess you could say it unlocks. I mean, if you take it down the family, that like a man and woman coming together, having children and starting a family, like it opens chaos into the world. I mean, there's nothing more chaotic than having children, you know what I mean? And trying to manage and to connect together to civilize these uncivilized, balls of mass that take on personality.
Yeah, I don't know if
Maybe it's just bringing that into the world, like, because you have to have both parts to start to have a kid, and maybe it's just that a metaphor of when those come together, they will release these chaotic forces into the universe.
Yeah, I've never really thought much about it I've never thought about it being a man and a woman necessarily. I mean, it always has been, I just thought it as, you need a gatekeeper and then someone with a key to open the gate so that the evil could be released. So I don't think I've ever thought that much deeper than that.
Suggested that they had sex to open that up, right? Like that the gate wasn't
I don't
open.
know that I'd ever even thought about it that deeply. Yeah. But yeah, I could see how, if that is kind of the message, that creating family. But I think more so it's another opportunity for growth that's created. So chaos really isn't a negative thing. It's just an opportunity, right?
That's just it.
And then it's survivable, right? And I think that's what the Ghostbusters show, is that, hey, even though there's this change in this new trial in life, it's survivable, and you can move through it and be able to come out on top.
With friendship, with brotherhood, because
they survive,
support.
right? They break them out of their cocoons, their statues.
Well, and I love the Eastern philosophy, which I know almost nothing about, but I love the idea, like we were actually talking about this earlier, that with religion, or the Western view of like law and sin and justice and all of that, a metaphor of let's say God, but the idea that instead of it being like evil and good, which I believe there is evil and good in the universe, but instead looking at with order and chaos, and that growth in life is working from a place of some semblance of order and wandering into an area that is chaotic and creating order or understanding, right? Because I mean, that's kind of the opening of the whole movie, or what these guys are fascinated about. They're fascinated by these supernatural, unknown mysteries that are outside the norm, and they're investigating those things. They're trying to cultivate a science. They're trying to quantify it and theorize about it and give an answer to it, right? And so there is this unknowingness that they are confronting and developing knowingness. I mean, right? Like they invent the proton packs that become the thing that can catch the supernatural, and then they put it in this box. You know what I mean? They kind of contain it, or put a boundary around it so it's not wreaking havoc in people's houses and in hotels, right? I mean, that's really interesting.
I think from that perspective, it's interesting to me also that, so if we see the chaos having the gatekeeper and the keymaster come together, releasing the real chaos, right? And I think the interesting thing is that this happens at the end of the story. So what has happened is that the chaos becomes manageable as the characters, right, have started to view and see their own potential and worth, as they've come to accept themselves for who they are and what they have to offer,
and collaborate.
They're able to manage that chaos, and they're able to manage it in a way that allows progression and growth for others. And I think that's a really interesting concept. I think at some level, each of us desires to be supportive and helpful. That creates connection for us in life,
and
but
purpose and
it's
meaning.
this idea, purpose and meaning. It's this idea that really the best way to do that is to first focus on ourselves, and that's a hard notion sometimes because we view that as selfishness. But I wonder if that's more so self-care.
Well, I think it's about where
than it is selfishness.
Well, it depends where it's directed, right? Because Bill Murray, I would say at the beginning of the movie, is incredibly self-indulgent and selfish. You know what I mean? So I think it's about where that's directed.
But he's not taking care of his self-worth,
right,
and his
totally
view,
agree.
right?
Yeah, totally agree.
It's selfishness, not self-care.
Right, which is my notion of like, what direction is it going? Is it just
Mhm.
in an unadulterated fulfillment of natural desire, or is
Yeah.
it directed toward some sense of growth, some sense of understanding yourself and understanding the place you have in the world? And right, because I think that that's the thing that's so essential, that when I see people that are so distressed, very often there's a high correlation, not always, but a higher correlation of unknownness or purposelessness in some aspect of their life, that they're not taking responsibility towards growth. They're not being, useful or cultivating usefulness for their family or loved ones or the world that they live in. And I'm all for having fun and being spontaneous
Well, I
and
think that's
free,
oftentimes because they're self-medicating
right,
for
avoiding.
what's going on. And
Mhm.
so looking inward and healing oneself so that you can love yourself again is the key to which you begin that path to being able to
Yeah,
contribute to others.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think you can't do that unless you first heal yourself.
Right. I also, well, I think, I think a part of that is healing yourself, but I think you also have to go into discovery. I think that that's one of the reasons why I love, going and doing random things with random people and going and finding out what's in the world, right? Because to me, it's like you can't find your meaning and purpose. Like you can't get on the road to progression in your life if you haven't gone into the world and discovered it and seen what's out there. It's like as you go into the world and learn about what's out there, then you become interested in, because like if I don't know a thing exists, but my purpose is to be engaged in making it better, like how can I find that if I'm stuck in my basement playing video games? Like if I'm not out in the world being exposed to what are the problems out there, like what are the fun enjoyable things out there that are amazing, like what mountains can I climb and look from, what oceans can I visit and swim in, what forests can I discover and the people that live there. And then as you go and discover, you're like, oh, this is the place I have in the world. This is the thing that I care about. This is the thing that the world needs that it doesn't know. But if you don't get out into discovery and aren't given the space to do that, which to me is like, the college years, the post high school years, like that 5 years is like, go out into the world, like go get into trouble and go see what's out there. And then as you go discover, you're like, oh, this is something that you stumble onto that then is this place that you're like, oh, I'm learning something about myself and seeing some aspect of myself in this forest or whatever. And so I think that I wonder if that's something that's being lost, is this, well, I don't know if it's being lost, but with the overprotectiveness of parents, they're not allowing their kids the opportunity for discovery.
So once again, if we're going to talk about parents, my ability to parent my child is going to be diminished if I'm not focusing on my own spiritual, physical, and emotional health.
Right.
And so we
If
might
I
view
feel
that as
incapable,
selfish, right? Yeah,
right.
exactly. If we feel incapable, we feel inadequate. And
We
I might
become
view
like the
that as
tyrannical,
selfish as a parent.
right, because we become the
Mhm.
tyrannical, overprotecting,
Yeah,
parent that has to keep
exactly.
innocence safe in the world. And it's like, you're
Which
going
is
to
really
destroy
hard because we carry a lot of shame, right? We carry a lot of guilt as parents because we care and we view what we do ultimately as being the cause of the agency and choice of our children. And that's a gray area and a fine line that can get us into a lot of shame. But
Sure.
I think you're absolutely right. Discovery, I think, comes as we are more physically, spiritually, and emotionally grounded and balanced in our life,
And given opportunity,
and then
and
it opens
having
up.
courage, and having
Mhm.
courage to go
Mhm.
out to discover, right? Which is
Sure.
definitely a problem, even in our faith, that when we become overly concerned about our kids wandering, it's like, no, we got to let them discover. It's like, it's, instead of this idea that they can never make mistakes or you can never mess up, you can never get a B, you have to get A's. And it's like, no, like you got to let them discover, you got to let them go out into the world. without you.
In order to be vulnerable enough to allow that to happen, right, we have to start with ourselves. Because we're not, as a parent, we're not going to be able to do it. Otherwise, we're going to try to do it, and then we're going to self-medicate with something else to handle the stress of allowing that thing to happen, because it's going to drive us
binge
nuts.
watching TV shows.
Well, I mean, that's okay. I don't mind that one.
That one's totally fun. Binging ice cream.
Oh, I wish I could
totally
binge
fun.
watch shows all day and all night, but we can't, right?
I like it, but I can't. I have to go. Like, I went and played soccer this morning with some friends. Like I have to go do fun things. Like,
we're
I
doing
have to
the
move.
Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're watching it in timeline order on Disney Plus. And man, sometimes I feel like I used to sit all day and just watch movies.
Dude, give me popcorn. I can't sit all day, but I absolutely can enjoy it. Especially like I definitely would enjoy it if we were hanging out doing it. Like, if I was going to hang out with you, like if we were going to sit and do that, I would definitely.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun.
It would totally be a lot more fun.
I have a habit of building Lego, so I'll build Lego.
Oh, you do like both
watching.
at the same time?
Yeah,
that's fun.
I love it. Okay, so I wanted to ask you also, though. So Ghostbuster Afterlife, you like Ghostbuster Afterlife quite a bit.
I really liked it.
I will say I
really liked it.
I liked it. I thought it was good. I liked the meaning of it. I mean, I feel like it was kind of like a rehash of Ghostbusters.
Sure.
I don't feel like it was really much different.
It wasn't like a new story.
It's like setting up. I hope they do more, right? For me, it's like setting up, and it's like, okay, we have this story still in here. We still have this Gozers still alive, right? We still have this go kind of around, and they're dealing with this in this story. And so it builds up to where I feel like they could do more movies, and it'd be really interesting to see more storyline. So I liked that. I liked a lot of things about it. I thought it was fun. I don't think I like it more than Ghostbusters.
No, I saw it as an appendage. I thought it was loyal. Like I didn't really enjoy the other Ghostbuster movie with the female cast. I thought that
what is that one called? It starts with an A also.
It just seemed purposeless and empty and thin. It didn't feel like it had like this, like we're talking about Ghostbusters, like this has meat to it. I didn't feel like that story had meat to it. Though I thought Hemsworth was freaking hilarious. I
like all the actresses.
No, I like those actresses. I just felt like the story was hollow.
Afterlife has definitely a whole nother like there's meaning to this story.
Yeah, I mean, you've got these kids like figuring out who they are, right?
What
like,
did you like about it? That's kind of what I'm curious, because I can, just knowing you, I can definitely see, and part of what I loved about the movie was this story of family and how it comes to a crescendo towards the end.
Yeah,
really just as bonding and really healing, right?
Because there's this notion of abandonment, there's this notion of craziness, there's this notion of illegitimacy, and I love that, like, the girl connected with was it because it was her grandpa, right? Like, Egon was her grandpa, right?
Yeah, her grandpa.
And so I love the idea. I guess my grandparents have had a really big role in me figuring things out in my life, where I felt like my parents were a little misdirected and struggling, and my grandparents were holdovers, from a generation that took responsibility and had order and classic kind of conservative values. And I think I discovered those. And so I think, her connecting with her grandpa and that awakening some part of her, and finding that in the world, and the daughter being able to heal, and understanding that her dad was, trying to protect the world, or, was protecting the world by keeping evil at bay after he left. And that starts to erode, but then they're drawn to this place. And I just like it. I think it was just I like that it was a coming of age story for a bunch of these different character types.
Yeah.
The thing that was
I'm
really
hopeful to see what happens with it. right? I really liked the characters they have in this one, and how they kind of pay homage still to
well
classic.
and I think also too, because I knew of this story about Bill Murray and Ramis falling out, it just felt like they were
especially
saying
towards
sorry.
the end, right?
Dude, it's gonna make me cry just think about it now. Like it was just a beautiful scene. I think that idea too, I think the thing that really struck me as they were activating whatever the gate protective force thing was at the house, and the old Ghostbusters showing up.
Yeah, the huge trap.
Yeah, the huge trap. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea of them being helped by those on the other side.
Yeah.
And so whether you're a believer that people live after death, or it's the voices of those remain, I just thought it was really well done. I him
couldn't
showing
imagine
up at that moment and helping, and him being seen as this ghost, and knowing the backstory of
that must
Bill
have
Murray.
been a hard scene for Bill Murray. Like I felt like as soon as that, like you had Harold Ramis come in ghost form, right? So Egon's there in ghost form, and kind of what they were saying and the meaning implied, I just automatically thought of them as like people, not as actors, right? But as people, and kind of this is Bill Murray's way of saying, "Hey, I love you." Yeah, right. And I miss you. And I thought, wow, that's really that was really cool to me. And Egon looked great. Like, what we can do now with
so cool
computer graphics is so amazing. I mean, it makes me think of Luke, but anyways.
And so because I love this movie so much and watched it so much, and it was such a fun movie, it just gave homage to the nostalgia, and it honored the story. The thing that pisses me off about the movie, though, I just can't believe that they didn't play the theme song or retro the theme song in the movie. Like when they busted the car out of the jail, why did they not go dun dun dun? I'm like, why did you save it for the end credits, or do like a upgrade, like redo? Like I love the upgrade redo of the Mission Impossible song in Mission Impossible 2. Or I love, one of my favorite things about the Mission Impossible movies is that in every one of the movies they've redone the theme song in a really different, like pop cool way. Like I love it. I just think it's so cool because it ties it back to the original. And they didn't do that. And I'm like, why would you not do that? Like that was so uncreative to not.
I don't know why.
To give everybody that moment, because that's like the thing, like that, like even still, I mean, the fact that song like hit the charts, like as a completely original movie song, that's ridiculous, but it like hit the charts in the 80s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that they wouldn't involve that in this movie, it was like, I think it was a missed opportunity, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't have that play until the end credits. I think when they're on the bridge or something, but I did love the music. Did you notice how it was all kind of like throwback to Ghostbusters music?
Yeah.
And they could have easily have done that also, but I wonder if they wanted to keep it in original form. I don't know why they had it at the end, but I did love the music in Afterlife. I thought it was wonderful, but
I thought
I'm not sure why they didn't have that theme song earlier.
Well, and what's his bucket? The Ant-Man actor. Oh my gosh, he was so freaking funny, man. He was
he's good. He's good in everything, and that goes all the way back to, I think the first movie I remember him in is Clueless, and just loving him. Paul Rudd, I think.
Yeah, Paul Rudd. He is so.
But I kind of, now as you mentioned the music thing, I wonder if that was also kind of symbolic, right? Of, well, they're not actually Ghostbusters because everyone was divided, everyone was separated, and it wasn't until they came together at the very end that they were Ghostbusters. And it's interesting that that's when the theme music plays.
Well, it's after
at the
credits.
End.
Well, in the after
it's
credits,
when they're driving like on the bridge, where it's after all this has happened, right? And that's the next time you see the car.
That's
again.
Fair. I mean, I guess if that's why they did it, because they hadn't evolved to that state yet. I could get behind that, I guess. And the after credit scenes with Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver were freaking hilarious.
Oh yeah, when she's I think testing him, right? She's testing him with the whatever those cards are called.
Yeah, because it was a total it was a total flip of that opening moment, and it was so good.
I just one last thing. I don't know if you have anything else you want to mention, but one last thing. I think one of the unsung heroes, one that you don't really hear talked about a lot, but who has always been one of my favorites. I really like him, probably second to Venkman as Ghostbusters, is Winston. You don't really hear him mentioned a lot, but I feel like you don't have the Ghostbusters unless you have Winston. Just I love he's got the down to earth, I will do whatever I need to do. I'm a hard worker. Yep. And I love his
do you believe in ghosts?
Yeah, his subtle comedy, right? His subtle, the way, like he's just so, I feel like, charismatic and yet so like, I don't know if low level is the right word, but he's like so subtle when he as his character in Ghostbusters. And I think he's the perfect to wrap up the ensemble for Ghostbusters. I feel like if they didn't add him,
it wouldn't have worked as well.
Yeah, I just don't feel like it would have. And so I've always loved Winston. And he just doesn't have a ton, but the scenes that he's in
are fantastic.
In Ghostbusters are awesome. So I just want to shout out to Winston. He's always been my second. Venkman, I just have always loved, I think because of him getting slimed, and then he's just funny. But then Winston has always been my second. The other thing I noticed, though, did you notice how much they smoke? They're
in the original,
all of them, are constantly smoking. I was like, my goodness, it's hard to remember.
Life has changed. It's so interesting how
back then movies, cigarettes, and now you don't even. I mean, rarely do you see that.
No,
it's so.
If it is, it's usually drugs. It's usually like pot or something. Like that. It's a really interesting cultural shift that movies don't glorify that or do that at all anymore. That it like doesn't work. But no, I think that that's one of the reasons why I really love this movie was because of the interplay of that group of friends. That they do. They are like metaphors for such different personality types. You know what I mean?
Well, I love Winston, at least that we know, isn't a doctor, right? He never references himself as doctor.
It's like another set of hands.
And I have always loved that as a kid and as an adult, that, hey, you can be a person and still be a hero. And that really magnifies and exemplifies for me this idea that the hero's journey really isn't about this glorious thing. This glorious thing is
this glorious personality,
overcoming our own inner demons each and every day. And that's the hero's journey to me. And I think for me, that's I most relate to Winston because I'm not a doctor of anything. I don't consider myself an expert in anything. Well, maybe in toys, but in Star Wars, partially,
we absolutely are relationship experts, dude. You can't do as much time. You have thousands. I mean, I don't know how many more years I'm ahead of you, but we absolutely are experts. You can't spend. I mean, come on, man. We spend 6 to 9 hours a day talking and listening and wading into emotions. We've heard so many stories. We hear things that people don't say to anyone else ever in their life.
Yeah, 15 years. I've been doing therapy for 15 plus years, and I still don't think I'm an expert, but I still get surprised, and maybe that's why.
I would say expert compared to the average person that hasn't spent 15 years worth of hours, 20 to 30 hours a week engaging emotional experiences and relationships and helping support people in being a hero in their own journey. discovering their value and taking on and challenging and engaging in the develop of competence so that they can overcome the lie that they don't matter, and supporting them with love and encouragement and without judgment and all of those things. Like, you know, let's not, you know, diminish that. And you're good at it too. Like, you're good at it. Like, you're a good therapist.
Thanks, John.
You're a very talented clinician also, Mike. So it's like, I mean, we all know lots of therapists, and, you know.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So don't undersell. But the Ghostbusters, dude.
It's a fun one. I'd encourage you to watch it if you haven't. It's one that could it's another one that could be on your yearly list, right? It's another one that just doesn't.
Well, and it's one that you absolutely should introduce to your kids.
Yeah.
You know,
and you can watch it any
watch.
time of year. We were kind of thinking of saving it for Halloween, but then we just did it, and it's like, it's one you could do any time of the year.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, dude. All right. Good
Adios,
times.
amigos. Thanks for joining.
Enjoy. Thanks for joining us.